evening to all of you who joined us. I think we are at 2 minutes past 4, and thank you for those who have joined in on time, and we will be kick-starting our session now. For those of you who are watching us live on Facebook, welcome and thank you for being with us. So on behalf of Elders India, I thank you all for joining us today in our next edition of the Elder Care Awareness series that we have been running over the last few months. Elders India was established in 2019, and it is a concept with the help of which working professionals can extend their support and love towards their elders and senior family members in a most effective and convenient manner. But at Elders India, we believe that this effort of ours needs a collaborative approach and needs to really become a mass community movement. So we are grateful and full of gratitude to all of you and all our partners and collaborators who are supporting us in this endeavor of ours. I'm going to first invite Mr. K.S. Raghunandan, who is the CEO and founder of Elders India, to quickly welcome you.
Thank you, Rima. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this webinar. As Rima mentioned, Elders India has been involved in spreading the awareness and helping the employees of the corporates to take better care of the parents and whatever that is needed in this regard. You know, we are happy to kind of step in and help. And mental health awareness is also a huge area of focus this year for Rotary International. And I recognize the presence of Rotarian Rashmi Thangsali, who's part of the Rotary Mental Health Awareness team. She's the district lead. Thanks for joining, Rotarian Rashmi. I also recognize the presence of Suresh Babu, Rotarian Suresh Babu, who's the president of Rotary Bangalore Brigades. Thanks for your support. And Rotary Bangalore Cantonment is also part of this initiative. And thanks to all the Rotary members for their support in this initiative. And needless to say, there is a huge focus within Rotary as well, even other than even just not just this year, but there is a Rotary Action Group, Alzheimer's Dementia Rotary Action Group, and Wing Commander Sabharwal is the lead for that in India. And thanks so much, Wing Commander Sabharwal, for your support. We've been doing this since the last 12 months. And really appreciate your support. And we have Dr. Soumya Hegde, who's the geriatric psychiatrist, and we couldn't have had a better team to kind of take us through this very important topic. Dementia now affects 7.4% of Indians. Is a recent report that got published by 𝐒𝐚𝐿 Delhi along with University of Southern California. That means today the known cases would be somewhere close to about 8.8 million in India, and is expected to double by 2036. So this is an alarming rate of increase, and this is something that we all need to know more about, and we have the best team that is that we could put together for us to get a little more awareness in this regard. Let me then hand it back to Rima for a quick introduction to the speakers that we have today, and we can get on with the program. And back to you, Rima.
Thank you, Raghu. So I would first like to just talk a little bit about why we are doing this session today. So September is considered to be the month of Alzheimer's, and 21st September is honored as World Alzheimer's Day. And the increase, like Raghu said, the increase in the number of patients suffering from Alzheimer's is very, very disturbing. And the data from survey says that we have a staggering 8.8 million of the Indian population which is being diagnosed with Alzheimer's, dementia, and related diseases. And I'm sure there are many, many more who do not even get diagnosed. And hence, we felt that as Elders India, we needed to do our bit in spreading awareness around this disease. Our two experts on our panel today for this discussion, Dr. 𝐆𝐞𝐫𝐢𝐚 𝐏𝐬𝐿. She's a geriatric psychiatrist with nearly 2 decades of experience working with seniors with mental illness. Her area of interest and expertise is the management of managing challenging behavior in dementia through a holistic approach, which includes medication, psychotherapy, individual care plan, and caregiver training. She also strongly believes that early detection and treatment of mental illnesses can significantly improve one's quality of life. And that's why today's session about understanding how we can diagnose or how we can pick up the early symptoms is very important. Married to a doctor who is an oncology urologist, she is a passionate mother of 2 growing up children, a boy and a girl. Dr. 𝐆𝐞𝐫𝐢𝐚 will be sharing about the disease from a medical aspect, which each of us should be aware of. I'm going to quickly also introduce our second panelist, retired Wing Commander D.P. Sabharwal. Vinod, can we have him on spotlight also, please? Wing Commander Sabharwal is a veteran and founder chairman of ADRAG India, the Alzheimer's Dementia Rotary Action Group. He served the nation through the Indian Air Force for 26 years. He's also a teacher and trainer, having taught for 20 years at various institutes and corporate houses. Wing Commander started working in the area of Alzheimer's awareness after being a caregiver to his wife for 12 years and is spearheading the campaign of launching chapters of ADRAG India in various Rotary districts of the country. He will be sharing the journey of the challenges that the family and the patient go through and some practical tips on what to watch out for and how to be prepared for this tough time and answer any questions that you may have. We are going to be requesting each of them to speak and share their insights and perspectives, and we will be taking up questions and answers as they come in towards the end of the session. So please do use the chat window to put in any comments, any questions that you may have. We will also be picking up questions which those from the Facebook chat for those who are watching our live Facebook streaming. Quickly before we start, I also just want to acknowledge our outreach partners, Tiger Tech Security, who has been collaborating with us and is working in the space of smart living marketplace in India with their off-shelf, DIY, and fail-safe range of products that are specially designed for India with a focus on security and safety of our homes and family. Thank you to all of us who have joined us today. And Dr. 𝐆𝐞𝐫𝐢𝐚, I hand over the floor to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Rima. Can I screen share? Okay. Okay. Before I begin with the presentation, am I audible? Clear? Okay. I just wanted to express my sincere gratitude to the platform itself, to the Rotaries, to ADRAG, and to Elders India. It is very, very nice that there are so many people coming together. And over the years, since I've been practicing in Bangalore, I've only seen this family of people committed to this cause grow. Year on year, I see more collaborations happening. As opposed to when, in the early 2008, 10, when I came to Bangalore, there was really nothing happening on the scene. Forget dementia, even in the elder care space. But to see so much interest is very heartening. To see so many people passionate about this cause is even more heartening. And to see people like, Wing Commander Sabharwal, I think retired is not a word to be added before his name ever. He just keeps trooping on. So it's, the kind of work that he's done over the last few years to further increase the momentum to spread awareness on dementia is absolutely wonderful. So thank you, Wing Commander Sabharwal, for everything that you're doing. Okay. Now this is just a representation of what has already been said. everybody's talking about dementia. They've been talking about it more in the last few years. And you see these words splashed across newspapers, not just on the 21st of September, but through the year. Every time something new happens, every time a patient is lost, every time there is, somebody out there who's a famous personality who starts forgetting, you see these kind of headlines come up on newspapers. But what is nice is that along with these newspaper clippings, I think some of you would have noticed this other one, which came up in the newspaper yesterday. It was all over the internet yesterday with, and you can see we have Wing Commander Sabharwal in the photograph there as well. And we have the Health Minister of Karnataka, who has now declared dementia as a public health priority, which means that we will have lots of campaigns, lots of work being done across the state in terms of creating awareness and equipping people to manage and diagnose patients with dementia, as well as support caregivers in the community. So the door-to-door campaign that is going to be kickstarted in terms of identifying people with dementia and providing families with the right kind of advice at the earliest point is probably the best thing that can happen. It's the leap that we were looking for so that we could start doing more in this space. The demographics, as far as dementia is concerned, have again already been mentioned. We have approximately 9 million people in India living with the diagnosis. And this is just the tip of the iceberg. These are people whose families understand that there is something wrong, have taken them to a doctor, got the diagnosis, and therefore the diagnosis is being mentioned on record. So 9 million is probably not even coming close to the actual numbers of people who are suffering and living with this condition. The numbers that we have, the 9 million, is on par with countries like the US and UK. More people are females. Most of the patients live in rural India. And what is interesting is also that there is a huge cross-state variation. So you will see the numbers are unequal across the states. Now, strangely, further down the presentation, I will mention how literacy plays an important role in dementia. But what I'd also like to mention is that age is another factor, which is why we have states like Kerala having staggering numbers of people with dementia, although the literacy numbers are extremely high in Kerala. So it is essentially a disease of age. And before we go into the symptoms, I'd just like to mention this is Dr. 𝐒𝐚𝐿 Alzheimer's. He was a German psychiatrist who discovered the disease and named it in 1906. So the word dementia comes from a Latin terms, 3 Latin terms, D meaning loss, ment of the mind, and ia is the state. So basically a state out of mind. And if you can see, the first patient was Auguste. She was only 51. So although we do realize, or do we commonly see patients with dementia in their late 60s, 70s, and 80s, it can occur earlier in life. And there is a condition called early onset dementia, which happens in people in the age group of 30 to 60 years. And the numbers of patients who are being recognized with early onset dementia has also increased exponentially in the last few years, perhaps because of increased awareness. So that's something that we need to be aware of. Now, coming to what is dementia. Dementia is a condition that affects the brain. Okay, so it's an impairment in brain function. And importantly, it is a group of symptoms. There is not one symptom on the basis of which we can make a diagnosis of dementia. So what are these symptoms? So we need at least 2 of these. Okay, so we need a loss of recent memory. Now that's important, because most people think that I remember everything. I remember what I did in school. I remember what I did in college. I remember the road to my house. But what we are interested in, or what we are looking for, is loss of recent memory. Do you remember what you wore yesterday? Do you remember who spoke to you yesterday? Do you remember where you went yesterday? What you had for breakfast this morning? That's the kind of memory loss that is more important in diagnosing dementia. Difficulty in performing familiar tasks. If my grandmother is unable to use a new remote control for a new television, that does not mean that she has dementia, because she cannot learn. If she has forgotten how to run the washing machine that she has had for the past 5 to 6 years, then that's a concern. So it is performing familiar tasks that becomes an issue for patients with dementia. Problems with language. They are unable to find the right words to express. It takes them a long time to figure out the right word. They may be able to tell you the function of something, but not name the object itself. Something I use, to do this, and the word comb eludes them. So you need to look at these early signs when we're trying to identify patients with dementia. Disorientation to time and place. Waking up in the afternoon and going to take a bath when that is something that they do after waking up in the morning. So they are not able to understand that it's not morning, it's afternoon, and this is not an activity I do at this time. Or waking up in the middle of the night and wanting to go shopping. So there is disorientation to time, not able to decide whether they are still at home or they've moved to their daughter's house or they're visiting their son's house. It takes them a long time to figure out where they actually are and find their bearings. Poor judgment. There's a fire, but they forget that they need to get out of the house. Somebody's fallen, a child, a grandchild has just fallen, but they're not able to understand that they need to go and pick the child up, that that's something that they can do. So the judgment is impaired. They're not able to react and understand the situation like they used to. Impaired abstract thinking, which means that they're not able to make sense of time and distance specifically. So they might think that you could get to Mumbai in an hour, not by flight, even by train or by walking. Or they feel that, I can go to America just by this evening, I'll come and meet you. But so those are things that become harder for them to be able to place things in perspective across space. Misplacing things. Misplacing things is something that a lot of us tend to do. We keep things and then we can't remember where to find them. But patients with dementia will often misplace things because they've tried to hide them in a place which they think is safe. And when they can't find it, often they end up accusing other people in the house of taking their belongings and hiding them. And then they will not be able to understand it was they who kept it in this place, even if you confront them with it. Changes in mood and behavior, changes in personality are actually the two problems which bring patients to the doctors, because this is the point at which the families find it hard to manage the patient. If a lot of families tell me that if they can't remember the day or the date, if they can't remember where to go, I'm happy to support them, I'm happy to take them around. But when they can't remember how to wear their clothes, when they can't remember that this is my house, or they keep asking to go home when they're actually sitting at home, when they can't remember that this is night and I need to be in bed and not go around the whole house opening and closing doors and windows, that's when the behavior becomes difficult to take care of and families seek help. One of the other points is, loss of initiative. There will be lots of things that are there around them that they could keep themselves engaged in, but they find it hard. They're not able to understand that, I could probably do the dishes, or I could, check my emails. I could read a book. I could read the newspaper, do the crosswords. All these activities will have to be told to them, instructed to them, because they're not able to fill that space with things that they can do. So coming back, it is a group of symptoms. So the line of symptoms, or the whole series of symptoms that I just described, we need more than one of those, 2 or 3 of those to be able to make a diagnosis. Again, the symptoms have to be severe enough to impair their day-to-day life and independent functioning. We also need to make sure that there are no reversible causes which have caused these symptoms. Simple things like thyroid issues, anemia, severe anemia, some other metabolic conditions like low sodium levels, maybe a deep depression. Any of these could mimic, or the patients may present with some of the symptoms on that list, which need to be ruled out because those would be treatable causes. We also need to ensure that the symptoms are consistent for a period of 6 months. Very often, especially in the elderly, if there is a medical issue like a urinary tract infection or a severe pneumonia, they will be confused, they will be disoriented when they're in the hospital. They might even have behavior changes in the ICU, but that is not sufficient to label them as having dementia. So we need the symptoms to be persistent and not clear for a period of at least 6 months. So dementia is essentially an umbrella term. Okay, so this is a question that is often asked. What is the difference between dementia and Alzheimer's disease? Alzheimer's disease is a type of dementia. As you can see, there are other types of dementias as well, but what we have is Alzheimer's disease is the commonest type of dementia, which presents in most 50 to 75% of patients with dementia have dementia because of Alzheimer's disease. And I'll explain that in the next slide. The other types of dementia, vascular dementia, particularly when we see confusion or loss of memory, disorientation post multiple strokes in people who are hypertensive, diabetic, high cholesterol. So that condition is called a vascular dementia. There's another condition called a Lewy body dementia, where the changes in the brain are a little different from those in Alzheimer's, although the presentation might be similar. The reason we need to distinguish between these, or doctors try and distinguish, is because the prognosis of each of these dementias is different. We're able to better inform families about the course of the illness if we can segregate dementias depending upon what category it falls into. Okay. Now, as I was telling you earlier, so there are changes in the brain which are very, very characteristic of Alzheimer's disease. And as you can see in the first picture, we've got the healthy brain, and you've got one with severe Alzheimer's disease, which is typically shrunk. And that is probably the simplest way to explain this to a lay person, that essentially the brain shrinks. The person is not doing this deliberately. None of these behaviors are in their control. They are not capable of functioning as they used to in the past. And this happens because of an aggregation of amyloid plaques and neurofibrillary tangles, whereas the nerves, the neurons in the brain start tangling together. They lose a neurotransmitter. There is less of a neurotransmitter called acetylcholine, because of which messages are not able to be transferred from one part of the brain to the other, and people are unable to function like they used to and recall information like they used to. We have another image here of the PET scan differences between a normal brain and someone with Alzheimer's disease. Because of the significant shrinkage, you can see that the vasculature in the brain is significantly decreased in somebody with Alzheimer's disease. So we see these pathological changes. Unfortunately, these pathological changes, the PET scan, of course, we can see when the person is still alive, but the others are only possible to be witnessed on post-mortem biopsy. So again, differentiating between dementia and normal aging, because even as we age, it is natural for us to not have our memories as bright and reactive as it used to be in the past. And very often people say, I used to be able to just manually calculate 5-digit numbers on a page, but now I can't. I'm taking longer to do that. As long as you're able to do that, it seems to be a part of normal aging. If you can't understand how to add 5 plus 3 or 9 plus 2, and you've forgotten how to do that, then that is worrying. So in dementia, people forget the entire experience. You have sat here today, you have attended this talk. If I ask you tomorrow, you may not remember everything that I have said or anybody else has said today, but you will remember that you sat for close to an hour listening to this presentation, which is important. People with dementia will completely forget that they even sat for this presentation. And they rarely remember later. So especially when they've misplaced something, if I couldn't find my keys, I tried to think about when was the last time I used my keys, what did I do as soon as I came back home, and I was able to track my steps and retrace so I could locate my keys. People with dementia are unable to do that. So they're not able to go back and figure out where were they the last time that they were holding on to something. And when they do find it, they completely deny that it was they who put it there. So unable to use notes as reminders because they don't remember that they have a note. Whereas people with normal aging will get into the habit of making down little reminders for themselves so they can recall the things that they want to do. Unable to care for themselves, and normal aging people are able to, but physically they can't. Maybe because of osteoarthritis, they can't move their limbs as well, pain, frailty. So they need help and assistance. Whereas someone with dementia may look physically fit and fine, but they're not able to remember the sequence of steps for simple activities like even taking a bath or brushing their teeth. What happens first? What goes next? They're not able to do that. They might, mistake a comb to be a toothbrush. So there are a lot of these issues which can happen in dementia, do not happen in normal aging. Now, this was a study that was published in 2020, and I think it's very important. And I like to present this particular slide in all my awareness talks because it highlights one thing for me, which a lot of elderly people have a huge stigma associated with, and that is hearing loss. So this slide basically tells you by the percentage that we can reduce the chances of developing dementia if we address these issues. So addressing issues like depression in the general population can reduce the numbers of people with dementia by 4%. But if we were to address hearing loss as people got older, the number of people with dementia with incidence would come down by 8%, which is a huge number. And hearing loss is something which a lot of elderly people refuse to accept. That is a concern. Chalta hai, I can manage. I don't need a hearing aid. It is troublesome. It bothers me. I have to keep adjusting the pitch. I agree. But wearing a hearing aid allows you to be a part of conversations, allows you to listen to things that are happening around you, be more aware. The more you shut yourself down because you can't hear, the less likely your brain is to be stimulated and more likely that you will develop cognitive impairment in the future. So along with everything else like smoking, hypertension, diabetes, you can see the diabetes reducing the risk. Because diabetes is pretty well managed in the community. People are aware, they do the right things. Once they've been given a diagnosis of diabetes, they're careful about their diet, their exercise, take their medication. So it contributes to only a 1% risk. But hearing loss is huge. And it's mainly because people don't want to address that problem. Coming to the end of my presentation, just a couple of slides more. Just wanted to say that although there is this, a lot of fear around the diagnosis of dementia, which often prevents people from seeking help. They don't want to know. Ignorance is bliss to a lot. They may think there is something wrong, but they don't want it to be confirmed. But the truth is that even though we cannot cure dementia, we can try and manage it so that the person can live a life of dignity with a better quality, even with the illness. And the caregiver can get all the support that they need to make sure that the person has all that, all the support that is possible in the environment, in the community is available to them. And they're made aware of it. So I think that, if I look at the last 20 to 25 years, the future is certainly hopeful in all aspects. I'm not just talking, I know the slide just talks about the medication, but even I had done a presentation for Rotary way back in 2014 or 15, and I just came across one of the slides that I had used at that point, and I saw how sparse the resources in the community were at that point. And honestly, I think we have more ADRAG chapters across the country now than we had daycare centers in the country at that time. That was less than 10 years ago. So that itself indicates that even in a country like India, with our limited resources, we are doing incredible amounts of work to support patients and caregivers. So this is just because a lot of people who have a diagnosis of dementia want to know what can be done in terms of treatment and medications. So I thought I'll just put up this one slide to just tell you that there are medications. The first group of medications, starting with donepezil, which was launched in 1996, going on to memantine, which came out in 2003, are really the mainstay of treatment that we still have today. So even today, the drugs that I am able to prescribe are donepezil and memantine, which slow down cognitive decline. So if there are certain changes that would happen without the medication in 5 years, with the medication, I can hope that they could be pushed to 7 or 8 years. But essentially, from 2003, for the next almost 2 decades, nothing came out. There was no treatment, no new treatment that was being launched. And in 2021, we have aducanumab, which was launched. But unfortunately, both aducanumab and lecanemab, both are infusions. They are currently extremely expensive, not yet approved in other countries apart from the United States of America. We're still waiting for Europe to, approve this, and then perhaps third phase trials to start in India. But there is hope. So after a huge gap, we now have 2 drugs, and we're just waiting for them to become more accessible and easily available to patients who have early stage Alzheimer's disease. And these are disease-modifying drugs. So that's what makes it different from the previous group, which only slows down the decline. These two drugs, which have come out in the last 2 years, can actually reduce the plaque tangle deposits in the brain, which actually then means that the disease will progress much, much slower because the damage will be decreased. And with that, I'd like to end. Thank you very much for your patient listening, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Dr. Soumya. That was indeed very useful. Okay, so before we go on to the second part, to Wing Command and invite Wing Commander, just a couple of quick questions. One, very, very heartening to know about the treatment possibilities which are now emerging. And we are hopeful that in the coming years, we see a lot more new medical treatments being made available. So it is interesting when you talked about normal aging versus dementia. I think a lot of us who are still in our 40s, get hope from that when we don't remember where we've kept our keys, it may not just be a sign, it's just a sign of us getting old. So a couple of quick questions, and we'll take more questions later on after Wing Commander has spoken. Is Alzheimer's hereditary? Is it possible that if you have a family history of having Alzheimer's in the family, you have more chances of getting it?
Yes. There are genes which are directly linked to Alzheimer's disease. And what we find is that if there are multiple members of the family who are affected, then the chances of a genetic transmission are higher. We also find that it is genetic if the patients are presenting with the condition a lot younger. So in their late 50s, early 60s, then the chances are that this is the genetic form of the disease, and along with other members in the family. So yes, there is a genetic component.
Thank you. I think we have a hand raised, but Ms. Rita, if it's okay with you, we'll go on to the second part. Let Wing Commander share his insights, and then we will take all the questions. Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, so Wing Commander, why don't we have you on screen now? And we would like to hear from you about your experiences and insights as a caregiver, and what would you like to share with others who are going through a similar journey?
Thank you, Rima. There are many life-threatening diseases like cancer, HIV, AIDS, diabetes. And from each one of these diseases, even from the terminal stages, the patients have recovered, come back and spoken as to how bad or deadly these diseases are. But there's only one disease in the world today from which not a single person has recovered to talk about what it is, and that is Alzheimer's. And it is people like me who have looked after the patient who are able to talk about it. And let me admit that I have not only looked after my wife, I have lived Alzheimer's with her, and probably my pain was more than hers, because in the last 2 years, she didn't know what was happening, but I was aware what was happening to her, and my helplessness added to that. Now, that is the reason about 6 years back, when she passed away, I realized and I thought and I decided that what I have gone through, maybe I should pass it on to others. So I'm going to talk about the caregiver's aspect. Yeah. Can I move?
Yes, please.
Rima, I'm not able to. Okay. Now, Dr. Soumya mentioned about those 10 factors, 10 symptoms. Those 10 symptoms I am divided into 20 actual things: losing important things, unsafe task performance, let's say put on the gas, and then instead of putting the utensil, a person puts the hand onto the gas. Making repeated calls and contacts. My wife many times called my son and saying, your father thinks I'm insane. He may be. Getting lost in the known surroundings, go out and not able to come back, and making up stories that after doing something, always an excuse to say this is happening. So this is one type of symptoms which causes irritation to the caregiver. The second thing, the further goes, refusing to do anything, Asked to brush? No. Asked to eat? No. Bad mouthing you to others? People are not looking after me. Resisting care, for forcing them to take bath, brush, swearing and cursing, shouting and yelling. All this introduces anger, a next step in the caregiver. Then comes slightly advanced stage of Alzheimer's, throwing things, no solid sleep time, sleeping during the day and awake whole night. It happened for 2 months in our case, and you can believe what happens when she could move around in the house, throw this thing and that thing. Nobody could sleep. Or refusing to eat or drink, or other side asking food all the time. Then the patients get upset with the stomach and their dietary systems and undressing anywhere because they can't make out whether this place is a chair or a pot or whether it's a bathroom or a drying. That causes a lot of frustration in the caregiver. And the next set of things, feeling sick, genuinely or otherwise, striking out at others, yes, hitting is not uncommon in many things. Seeing people and things, hallucinations, and then instability, falls and injuries leading to infection before the end comes. Now that is a stage of helplessness. When you see all this happening and you just can't do anything about it. So this is what you feel. You feel lonely right on the edge of a cliff, nobody there. You're irritated, you're angry, you're helpless, you're frustrated, you're dejected. All these things happen to a caregiver. But what I have been advocating, you have to change that behavior of yours. You can't change the behavior of a patient. All you have to do is change the behavior. How? If you are stressed, start spelling it backwards. It reads deserts. Now you may say it may be easy to say, but no, it's not very difficult to carry it out in practice. So my advice to everybody is you must cope with the challenging behavior. They are all challenging behavior, which I've said, your anger, your frustration, your helplessness, irritation, all comes. But it is how you do what you do that makes a difference to your life, in addition to the patients. Now, I remember many friends said, Sevi, you are great. You have done so much wonder. You have done this. I used to ask a simple question. Tell me, do you have a choice? Or later on I said, did I have a choice? Could I have dumped her? No. If not, then might as well do gracefully. Find out ways and means how I retain my sanity. So I've got 5 things. Number 1, accept the reality. What has happened has happened. You have not caused it. Many times a guilt feeling comes. Had I done this, probably it would have happened. Had I gone to this person, it could have been avoided. Well, those are things of the past. Nothing can be done except getting boiled up inside. Forget about it. You concentrate on the present, which is fairly difficult, and the future can't be better. So don't stress yourself over what could have been done. That's gone. Now concentrate on that it is there on your hands. You got to handle it. 2, it requires a lot of patience. They say Alzheimer patient starts behaving like a child. There I differ. They're childlike, but not like a child. Child improves with every year. My wife started deteriorating every year. When she got it, she was 52, I was 55. 10 years down the line, her requirements had gone 10 times higher, where my energy level had gone down from 55 to 65. I couldn't do it. All I could do is fret and fuel, but it doesn't help. So I had to bring in a lot of patience. So once you have patience within you, the frustration part goes out. Empathy is very, very important. It's totally different from sympathy. Because the Alzheimer patient is no more son you have known. I'd been happily married for 30 years before the thing started, and over the next 12 years, it was literally going through hell. I just couldn't help her whatever way I wanted. And in the initial 3 years till the detection was made, and even 2 years after that, I used to say, why are you doing? I used to sort of doubt her at times, accuse her at times, shout at her, what's wrong with you? Why don't you listen? Are you gone insane or I'm mad? But then I realized, and I put 6 posters in my bedroom, corridor, drawing room, dining, kitchen, and balcony. 6 simple words. She is not doing on purpose. She is not doing on purpose. The moment this thing got into my mind, the whole thing improved, and thereafter there was no irritation in my behavior. Both was count blessings. Yes, lot many times. She stopped eating. Feeding her 3 times a day, 1 hour, holding the spoon. 1 hour every 3 times a day wasn't a problem. Problem was my shoulder started aching because holding it like this. But then I realized, they say forgetfulness happens in Alzheimer's, and that came as a blessing in disguise. She won't eat. I stopped feeding her. 5 minutes later, I feed her. She used to forget that 5 minutes back she was resisting it. When she fell down, broke her hip bone. My God, oh, thank God. My kid said, Papa, what? I said, thank God, spine is not broken. Only hip can be replaced, spine cannot be replaced. So every time something happens, you have to think it could have been worse than this. That sort of acceptance helps you, not cursing you or the God or somebody else. You learn to handle the situation as it is. And 5th is self before others. I being an aviation man, 71 onwards, I've been involved with aircraft. And whenever anybody has traveled, you remember the air hostess says, in case of loss of pressure, the mask will drop. First, put the mask on your face before looking after your infants and others. That's the only time when it says self before others. And this is the second time. Due to this, I had a physical breakdown. Early morning, I was taken to the hospital. Oxygen was put. So when I got into senses at 11 o'clock in Vikram Hospital, I was taken there at about 6 o'clock in the morning. So 11, I looked around. And on the bed, the first thing I told, I said, Sabi, you can't die before her. You have to see her through. So that is there. A patient, a caregiver has to have that determination that I have to outlive, I have to handle whatever I have to. Now, this is what happens to Alzheimer's patient from an absolutely green brain, right from childhood to the whatever adult age. Later on, it becomes, ensure that it doesn't happen to you. And for that, sure way to do it, I've got 3 mantras. Take a break every day. Leave the patient for about an hour and just go out, whatever you want to do. A walk. One of my friends started going to the club to play bridge. Somebody said, don't you feel bad? Aren't you ashamed? 1 hour you are going to play bridge. He said, look, if I was going to a temple, you would have said, oh my God, thank God, you're doing a good thing. So break could be for anything. It's a must. Take a break. First time when I got a break after 9 years, my children sent me to Delhi. 5 years, I hadn't attempted any family function. They sent me from Bangalore to Delhi, evening flight. I attended the night function. Next day, I was back home at 11 o'clock. My first question was, how is your mother? Children says, Papa, the way you had left her. But there was a tremendous change in me. My batteries were charged. I could then carry on. So taking a break is a must. Daily basis, weekly basis, monthly basis, you make a charter and take a break. Talk it out. You have to have a shoulder on which to put your head and talk about it. They can't help you. But it is like letting the steam out. Pressure cooker. If the whistle doesn't blow, steam doesn't go out, cooker will burst. And that is what happens to the caregivers. So talk it out to whomsoever, friend, relative, cousin, with whom you are very close. And thirdly, let out a cry. I remember during those tough days, there are 3 occasions when I cried like a child. You're human beings, your frustrations, anger, everything builds up. Let it out, take it out. It's a normal way. The God has given you tears. not to store inside. When they want to come out, let them out. Believe me, you will feel as light as with a tough, bad stomach. Moment you throw out, that time throwing out becomes uncomfortable, but later on you imagine how relieved you feel. Now, then you got to look after the physical health and the mental health. These two everybody knows. Yes, you got to plan financial health. That's very, very important part of this. Then lot many people find spiritual leanings, they help them. But before, more than all these four, what I say is a social health, like your friend circle, your, again, when I say take a break, write out, and all those are related with the social health. Do not leave out, cut out your social circle. It had happened for 3 years. I felt miserable. I started building up again towards the later stages when the things are becoming very difficult. So it helps. And just last one slide. Remember, you're not alone. There are lot many people, the numbers Dr. Soumya mentioned about it. They are in millions. They are everywhere. So they are there. So what you next got to do, join them. Today, there is a caregivers group. We have got about 90 people from across the country. Few people join every month. Few people leave because their dear ones are no more there. They talk out their problems. And believe me, it's such a good thing to join any help group. Go through literature. Dr. Soumya 𝐒𝐐𝐫𝐢𝐚, she started looking after my wife when I shifted from Chandigarh to Bangalore. So from 2011 onwards, I was in under her care. At that time, she was in Nightingale Medical Trust. She asked me, or rather forced me, to write the first book, Handling Alzheimer's with Courage. I'm grateful to Soumya because I think it has gone into 3 prints, more than about 20,000 copies I've shared with others. And after that, 2 years back, having gone through caregivers, I requested Soumya, let's write a book for the caregivers. So there is a Care, Learn and Share, which is co-authored by Dr. Soumya and me. My number is here. All the listeners can note down this number, send me your address, WhatsApp. I'll send the 2 books. Believe me, they'll help you in your journey. That's all. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Wing Commander. I think what you've shared has just humanized the entire caregiving journey. Thank you for being so open and transparent with the experiences that you've had. In fact, I was just recalling a few months back, we had done this little collaboration with a film director, Chintan Sarda, who had done a short film on Alzheimer's, based on Alzheimer's. It was very disappointing to read some of the comments that viewers had shared, saying, how can the caregiver leave the Alzheimer's patient with an attendant and go out to attend a wedding? So I think that's something which we all need to understand, that the caregiver also needs to take that break. The caregiver also needs to get that time off to be able to manage the patient in a much more efficient and effective manner. So thank you so much for sharing all of this with us. I think what we will do is, first we'll just pick up a couple of questions which were here. May I ask, is Miss Rita still online? She had wanted to ask a question. Okay, I can see Prakash. Prakash, we can unmute you if you would like to ask your question. Can you unmute yourself, or can help you? Yes.
Yeah, you can hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Thank you. Sir, I would like to know what questions or what to speak to a caregiver who is actually struggling, taking care. Me as a visitor, if I want to know, let them talk it out or let out a cry, what I have to talk to, how I can initiate a discussion in that line.
You see, if you're meeting for the first or second time, you can't do it. Person will open out with somebody with whom he has known for quite some time, because it's not easy to speak out what you are feeling. So you have to get into, as loosely said, into the good books or the confidence level. Then only you can do it. You just can't go and ask, what can I do? All you can do is say, what can I do? Should I look after your patient when you want to go out for half an hour, 1 hour? I can do that. So you have to start interacting at that level. And that also first, once or twice, you have to sit, see the patient along with the caregiver, and only then you can do it. It's a very slow process. It's unlike somebody is in financial difficulty, you take a bundle of rupees and say, okay, here is 1 lakh, take it. It can't happen. So it's a slow one. I hope Dr. Soumya agrees or wants to add something to that.
Yeah, I just wanted to add one thing, Mr. Prakash. I think more than what you need to do, there are certainly certain things that you should not do. And one of the things, and the most important, is do not talk about the patient in front of the patient. Yes. So that is something that, be very, very aware of. No matter how cognitively impaired they are, what stage of dementia they're in, they do realize that it's they who's being spoken about. They are the ones who's causing grief to their son or daughter or wife, and that's what this conversation is about, and that does not go well at all. So yes, you want to encourage the person to share, but perhaps it's not done best when the patient is around. So make sure that, like when Commander Sabharwal said, second meeting, third meeting, they feel comfortable enough to come out of that space with you. Maybe somebody else is there to take care of, the person with dementia, so then they can talk to you more freely and openly.
So Dr. Soumya, there is a comment from Meera. She says, my daughter-in-law is an audiologist, and she mentions that seniors should check their hearing, as hearing loss contributes to dementia. So how critical is this? At what stage of hearing loss should one go in for a full diagnosis or checkup?
See, I was actually wanting the audiology assessment to be included in the comprehensive health checks that most seniors undergo, and that's something that we're trying to see if it can be done, and encourage people to do it. A lot of hospitals have an audiology department. They have a department which can do that for you. It may say everything's fine, or it may indicate that there is a 5 or a 10% deficit on this side or that side. But doing it on a more frequent basis at least alerts you early enough. It's very hard for you to recognize that it's reached a point where it's significant. You wouldn't know. So the only way is to get that test done. I mean, it's like anything else, right? We don't know that our cholesterol levels are up until we get a blood test done. So,
and that was me.
Thank you, Meera. Thank you for bringing that up. I think it is something that we are encouraging elders to do.
Yeah. In fact, she got her mother a hearing aid, saying that though she felt fine, she's got it, she had crossed 60, she got her mother a hearing aid, and it definitely improved her hearing also, without her knowing that. So she brought it to our notice during her last visit here. She practices in Auckland. So
and
that's
very,
and many of the senior citizens packages do include audiometric tests.
Some of them have already started, but when it isn't, then I think people can ask for that to be included. And I know there's a lot of, it's expensive. What if I lose it? What if I break it? I don't know how to operate this. But I came across this patient whose daughter had brought something which was available over the counter in the US. And I thought that was really interesting because there was nothing. She had no idea how impaired her father is. And she said, I just picked this up and thought we'd give it a try. And it made so much of a difference.
Yeah, and and you feel included in a group, like,
Yeah, so that's the most important part.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Very interesting. Thank you so much.
I'm going to bring Tabu. Would you like
one more question? Is it okay if I ask? Does Parkinson's also lead to dementia?
Yes, there are certain dementias which are Parkinson's related dementias, but it presents a little different as I was saying, each dementia has a different presentation. So although some of the symptoms might be common, we do know that it was preceded by Parkinson's disease. So the kind of memory loss that they present with is slightly different from the type that we see in Alzheimer's disease. In Parkinson's disease, of course, there's a lot of physical disability way before the cognitive impairment kicks in. So there is that distinction. Even the treatment is a little different. So recognizing that this is Parkinson's dementia is important. It can happen in patients.
Yeah,
Not all, Not all. I don't
I
want
know.
people with Parkinson's to, start getting scared of this. Not all, but certainly some.
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Soumya, I have a question. This is Rotarian Satish B. I just want to know, is there any way of identifying the setting on of dementia, and is there any way we can sort of stop it occurring in the patients?
So if it is a definite diagnosis of Alzheimer's disease, even if it has been picked up early, we can't stop it. What we can do is try and slow the deterioration. So instead of the car, the decline proceeding at 80 kilometers per hour, I can try and bring it down to a 30 or a 40 with all the medical and non-medical interventions. So I didn't touch upon this, and I think we didn't have time to touch upon what you could do to try and minimize or slow down the progression of dementia. But a lot of cognitive stimulating activities, physical activities, which are different every day, social activities, all these, along with some of the medications that I put up on the slide, the combination will certainly help slow down if there is a definitive diagnosis of dementia.
But there is no way of completely stopping it, and
no, we can't, not yet. So that's where we are looking for these new group of medicines that have been launched in the last 2 years to see if they can work at the grassroots level of where the illness originates from, and see if that would give us, some hope.
Thank you so much.
Okay, so
in fact, Dr. Soumya, you took care of my father-in-law at Nightingale's. He was there in 2011.
Okay, maybe if I see you, then I might.
More than me, my wife used to be there, and then you B.S. Bhagwan, you were taking care of him.
Yes, I remember. Tall gentleman.
Yes, tall gentleman. I know.
Yeah,
you were taking care of him, and then of course at that time also you were telling us that there is no way you could reverse this or stop it. But I thought over a period of time, now it's almost 12, 13 years, I thought there would be some developments.
It has. So that's why 2021 and 2023, we've got 2 new drugs being approved by the FDA, but they have to become accessible. Hopefully that will happen soon. So that shift happens quickly.
Okay,
so there was one. Sorry.
Yeah.
I heard about some blood test kits that are now available, especially in Japan and so on, which kind of measures the nerve degenerating protein levels in the blood. Is it something that's available in India? Is it something that you advise? Is it expensive? Some light on that would help.
We can check for the gene. We can check for the apolipoprotein gene. Yes, for sure. Even the amyloid deposits, we can look at them on the PET scans. I personally don't ask for this specific blood test. It's more a research kind of a test so that you can identify it much sooner than the clinical symptoms. So for me, as a practicing clinician and not a researcher, unless I'm able to offer something to the patient after a diagnosis, I don't see the purpose of identifying it so early, even before the clinical signs and symptoms are on display or people can identify it. So it is possible. I'm sure research centers are doing that. There are certain centers in Delhi and Hyderabad for sure where we can send blood samples in cases where there is a query. Specifically, the neurologist is not sure whether this is Alzheimer's or could this be some other type of dementia. So, when we're trying to even distinguish between dementias and we are not certain about that, and the family wants to know, perhaps they want to, they have multiple members in the family, like you asked me earlier about genetic predisposition, the loading. So those are questions that are better answered if we have sent the samples off and got answers to those questions. But routine practice, I don't see, how it would help me change what I'm seeing in the patient or how it would help me change the quality of life of the patient.
So Raghu, I'm going to ask you a question since you've been working in this elder care. Now there are so many people, so many organizations working now towards bringing in awareness, helping people, supporting groups. You've started this platform a few years back. But what role do you think larger organizations or corporates can play in helping us spread more awareness and helping us be there for the elder care needs?
Okay, thanks for asking that, Rima. Obviously, an issue like this has multiple stakeholders, right? The individual themselves and the family and the caregiver, definitely the experts like Dr. Soumya Hegde and Sabarwal and a lot of NGOs and service providers who can help the family in case they have a family member going through that. So multiple stakeholders are there. And what EldersIndia does is bringing all the stakeholders into one platform. And one of the other key stakeholders here are the corporates, where most of the sons and daughters of the potential, victims of this disease, work. And therefore, I believe organizations, corporates are a key stakeholder in spreading the awareness of this, and many other, related, issues for the elders we face. And for that, they themselves need to be aware and understand, and they need to kind of provide a platform for the experts, for platforms like EldersIndia to be able to come and help spread the awareness with the employees. And then there are easy mechanisms that it will pave way for caregiving, like the support groups that in Commander Sabarwal talked about. I think the more the stakeholders come together, the better will be the approach that we can collectively undertake. And Dr. Soumya Hegde also mentioned the role of the government. So this is where I think each of us have a role to play, having understood what this disease is all about and how collectively we can help. And corporates will have to probably take a step here to help the employees, and this is where EldersIndia is committed to helping the corporates in this initiative.
Thank you. I think we are just a few minutes over 5, and we shall now conclude our
I would
session.
like to put in a word.
I have a question for Dr. Soumya. Is it okay to ask?
Okay, Dr. Soumya, do you have a few minutes more?
Yeah, sure.
We'll take a last question, please. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, you see, you mentioned that the symptoms of dementia can also imitate due to other disease like thyroid or anemic, right? So the question is whether the symptoms of dementia will it be fluctuating over a period of six months, or will it be consistent that sometimes he forgets, sometimes he doesn't forget? That kind of situation we will be able to see, or always he will be forgetting for 6 months?
No, it doesn't happen like that. But what we see is that in the initial stages, people will report that those incidents were happening infrequently. Sometimes once in 2 months or 3 months, they would look lost, or they would do something or say something which was so unbelievable, but they would just let it pass. So generally what happens is initially, when you look back, which is why I said by the time the patient comes to see me, the illness has already been around for 2 to 3 years, and it has come to the point where it is consistent. But when we look back and I ask the families to tell me how it all started, they then probably tell me about something that happened 3 years back or even 4 years back. But then it didn't happen again for 6 months, almost a year, everything was fine. So they thought nothing, forget about it. Even as major as people getting onto a train and they're traveling from, I'll give you this example, maybe it'll help you understand, Bangalore to Mysore, the person gets off somewhere in between to get himself a bottle of water and takes the train back to Bangalore rather than the one to Mysore. So gets onto the wrong train. He completely forgets that I was headed to Mysore and not Bangalore. He's disoriented. It happens, and then obviously they find him. There is a lot of trauma at that point. But then nothing happens. Everything is absolutely fine for even a couple of years after a major incident like that. So the family doesn't address it. They don't do anything. They might do some routine blood tests to make sure, if he's diabetic, sugar levels are all right, or BP is okay. But if all that is fine, they feel that, oh, this is a one-off, nothing, it just happens, age-related. And then when the episodes become more frequent is when they feel that, no, this is something not normal. We need to address it. So
I'd like to add to what Soumya said. You see, she had indicated those 10 symptoms. Now, something could happen today, something could happen after 2 months, something different could happen after 4 months. So I say first time something happens which is not normal, note it down. So it is connecting the dots. 3, 4 different things happened, but it happened in a period of time. That is a cause of alarm. That is what I say early detection is possible. If right from the first time you don't ignore it, you just don't pass it on as it could be under stress or under something. That is going to help in a big way.
Yeah, don't ignore it. Try and make sure that you get them checked. There is a neuropsychological battery of tests that can be done, which is not. It's not a scan. It's not an MRI scan. It's not most patients don't want to go through an MRI brain scan. They're scared of that machine. A neuropsychological test is just a paper pencil test, a memory test, which is fine for any of us to go through, right? And that actually spells out, it tells you what your cognitive level is today. So 6 months down the line, you repeat the same questions and you can see if there is a decline in your answers. You're comparing your answers 6 months back to your answers today. So it really helps patients and families track, has the decline been significant? Because we can't always do it with symptoms.
Actually, I want to take my father to check, but I don't know what to tell him. Whether he will be feeling afraid or concerned about if I say that we are going to have a check for dementia or something like that.
So why don't you tell him that this is something that was mentioned in your office that needs to be done, and both will get it done. Say even I am going to do it, and we can both sit and take the test together. Something like that. So make it normalize it, because they're used to all of us doing blood tests after a certain point, right? So just like the audiology, you can say if you are concerned. The other thing you can do is you can go and see somebody without dad first and understand what is the problem. If there is anything else that could be the reason for changes in his behavior.
Okay.
I'm sure the questions are not going to end.
Doctor, no question, Dr. Rima. I just wanted to say hello to Dr. Soumya because she had treated my father. And
nice to see you.
Namaste. I went through the whole thing. As Wing Commander Sabarwal said, I had gone through the whole thing as a caregiver to my dad. It was really painful. It was really, I would always tell you also, doctor, that it's really painful to see a patient going through it. He, in fact, didn't know that I was his daughter. He couldn't recognize me as his daughter, but he would always recognize Satish and say, oh, you're Satish's wife. That is, my husband's name is Satish. So he used to always tell, oh, you're Satish's wife. But he would never remember that I was his daughter. And I'm really grateful that I took care of him.
No, I mean, see, you remember that he was your father, and that care and concern that you showed, and that I think I am grateful to all my caregivers, because whatever I know about dementia today is not from books, but from each of you, and you have just taught me, and if it is you have taught me, then I'm able to share it with more caregivers today. So yes, a big thank you from me to all my caregivers.
Yeah, that's why my husband asked you the question, in what way is there a prevention from this? Because my father's sister, Malti Murthy, was also a patient now. She just recently passed away. She also was a dementia patient, and she was at Nightingale's only, doctor.
At the moment, we don't have anything. Even if you're diagnosed today, we don't have a medicine that can stop the disease from progressing apart from slowing it down. So I would really advise that you do what we advise you to do, is take care of your health, make sure that your BP, your sugar, your cholesterol levels are in control, exercise regularly, stay away from stress, be happy, try and have a good laugh. Don't worry about the future, because I really don't have control over it. So do the things that we can do with our time, because right now we don't have a cure. I hope that when it's your turn, my turn, something will turn up.
Thank you.
Thank you, doctor. Thank you so much.
Take care.
More strength to all the caregivers. It's
Yes.
not an easy journey, and I know I saw a few more who have joined in who've gone through that journey. So thank you, Dr. Soumya. Thank you, Wing Commander. This indeed has been a very, very heartening session, even though the topic is something which leaves all of us very unnerved. But the way you've simplified it for all of us to understand, all the insights that you've shared, all the tips that you have shared, I think at least we can do a bit of at least following that, getting to know more about this disease. I'm sure the questions won't end. This is a topic which we can go on and on about. We are almost at 5:15, so I will request all the participants that maybe we could connect offline. Wing Commander has already shared his contact details, so do reach out to him. We've known him for a while now, and he's one of the most helpful people that we've seen. So thank you so much. Thank you. This has indeed been a very enlightening session. And thank you to all of you who've joined in, to all our partners, for Rotary and our collaborators. Thank you for supporting us in this endeavor.